When someone asks you for a piece of advice and they're pouring out their heart and telling you their issues, it's very tempting to begin to formulate a response while they're talking. Essentially, you're not listening to them, you're already figuring out what to respond to them. It actually buys time. Because if you have to wait till the end that you listen to them and then begin to think about your response, you don't have time. And while they're talking, you can think about what the response is. But what ends up happening is you're not really listening to them. You're already trying to formulate your response. And then the response that you give is not necessarily the correct response, because it might be more about you than about them and about the truth. And even if you're a person who learns Torah, the advice you give may not stem from the Torah that you know. In order to connect the Torah that you know to the advice that you give, there's one key, and that is counterintuitive. Don't try to formulate a response before you listened. Spend that time while they're talking just listening, active listening, till the point that they understood that you got and you felt exactly what they feel. Because if you get into that space and you actually feel what the other person feels, and they get it, at that point, the response will be clear. Hashem will provide you the response. It'll just come down from the Torah that you know. And somehow the response will be there. Because the ingredient that you have there is called bitul, nullifying yourself. It's really hard to listen to the other person and not try answer. What you've got to do is let go. Bitul. We learned this from the grand, incredible teacher, Moshe Rabbeinu. And what Moshe did was, his motto was, V'nachnu mo. Everything about him was bitul, was letting go. It was never about me. It was always about Hashem, about the other person, about the truth. And instead of that making him lose out, he actually gained much more power through that. Fascinating expression in Chumash Devarim. We say it in Shema. It says, V'nosati esav b'sadcha li v'hemtecha. Moshe Rabbeinu is talking and he says, I will provide the vegetation needed for your animal. And that's very strange, because Moshe is a human being, and how could he possibly say, I will provide the vegetation for your animal? Hashem provides, not you. So in the first 4 Chumashim, it makes sense, because that's Hashem talking, and Moshe is just repeating the word of Hashem. But Chumash Devarim is Moshe talking. So what do you mean, V'nosati? I, Moshe, will give the vegetation? But you see, Shechina medaberes v'tichgrei shel Moshe. Even when Moshe is speaking on his own, the Shechina is speaking through him. Whatever he says is Hashem speaking through him. Because he reached the level of bitul, v'nachnu ma, letting go. It's never about me, it's always about the truth. It's always about Hashem. Hashem speaks through him. We're not Moshe. And we can't get that point that everything we say is divine. But when you do that act of bitul, letting go, in its simplest way, when someone's talking, just listen to them and don't try to think of yourself and of your answer and what you want out of this. Just listen to them. What you'll discover is that the Shekhinah will speak a little bit through you too. And when they finish and you got it, Hashem will give you the answer that you need. You'll have to just connect, and the answer will be right present, because you did bitul. You allowed Hashem to respond.